Okay, so we're back talking about acidic electrophiles reacting with alkene nucleophiles. And I want to continue to do reactions of strong acids, specifically with alkenes. So we are still working in category A in terms of electrophile type, and therefore carbocation intermediates are going to be the ideal mechanism. However, now I'm going to move into this list of reagents that go via acid-catalyzed processes. So you'll have some sulfuric acid, which is catalytic, and that sulfuric acid is going to react rapidly with any water that it encounters before the slow protonation of the alkene occurs. So this acid-base reaction between electronegative atoms is quite fast and is going to immediately produce some concentration of hydronium in solution. And so the hydronium can then protonate the alkene. We see that this alkene is tri-substituted or has a tertiary center bound to a secondary center. And therefore, it's going to be faster to form the carbocation at the tertiary carbon. So just like when it protonates with HCl, the hydrogen will add to the to the carbon with more hydrogens, and the water will serve as a leaving group, similar to what chloride did in the past.